$10,000. If you had an extra $10,000 every single month, how much would your life change? I think for the majority of people out there, it would be quite a bit. But before I get into that $10,000 number, hi, hello, hi, I know it's been a really long time. You probably thought this channel was dead, and you'd be half right. The truth is, in terms of content, this channel is dead. I haven't uploaded on here in years, but you would be surprised to hear that I think about you all the time. Not you specifically, but the channel and the content that I used to make, I think about it all the time. When I first made this channel, I did not make it with the intent of growing an audience or getting a big following or hitting 1 million subscribers. That was never the goal. I made this channel because I wanted to document my life of trying to turn nothing into something and trying to side hustle my way into money and eventually see if I could build a business. And if that inspired you, cool. I'm glad you're here. But like I said, it was always for me, it was kind of like my personal video diary of my journey so far. And so since it's been so long, before I jump into what that $10,000 number is all about, I think it's important that we look back on how this channel started. So the year is 2020. It is the month of July, the hottest month in Arizona. And we are in the middle of a full-blown global pandemic, that thing that we can't refer to. At the time, I was in the middle of paying off $70,000 worth of debt, and with a lot of options off the table, I needed a hobby that would not cost me any money and actually, in fact, hopefully make me a bit of money. And so I started this YouTube channel with the goal and the endeavor of seeing if I could find ways to side hustle and make money. A lot of people at the time were doing this, and so I kind of jumped on that bandwagon. So the very first episode started with me selling things around my house because all I had to start with was $0. At the time, I had never even been to the post office. I was very unfamiliar with selling things on eBay. And to think about how far I've come and how long ago that was, it truly feels like decades, and I'm just amazed at how far we've come. I didn't really have a goal in mind. I just knew that I was starting with $0 and I wanted to see how far I could take that and how high I could grow that number. Although I made a lot of episodes that first season, I never fully documented it perfectly. I think by the end of it, I got close to around $10,000 in net worth, which isn't bad. And that first season was just so fun because it was my first garage sale. It was my first time using sites like Poshmark or Depop or eBay or the post office or going to garage sales, any of that. It was a lot of fun. And then came season 2. I moved into a new home and I used up a lot of that initial $10,000 in that transition, in that move. And so I tried to start the channel over with just $100 and hopefully trying to grow it to $100,000 was the goal.
We're gonna start over with $100. And with that $100, we're gonna see if we can get that to $100,000.
Now with season 2, this time around, I had a ton of experience with eBay and going to garage sales. So I already knew what I needed to do and I had the foundation. But with this season, I was trying to take it to that next level and I started going to auctions. I started doing a ton of furniture flipping. I think I even got some like wholesale deals here and there. And at some point, I think I had maybe 3 or 4 storage lockers where I was just constantly rotating inventory. But during the middle of that season 2, one of the most amazing things in my life happened, and that was me having my first kid. And with that came a whole new challenge of just having really limited time. So I tried to carry on making those episodes while having a new baby. And it just got really difficult working a full-time job, being a new dad, and then trying to do this whole $100,000 to $100,000. It was also during this time that we successfully paid off our $70,000 in debt. And so I started making some videos that did pretty well about that topic, about paying off debt. And with that having been accomplished, my family on a whim, we decided to pick up all of our belongings, put them in the storage locker, and we moved to the Pacific Northwest for a few months, which was just incredible. So when we came home, we moved into yet another home, and with that came baby number 2. Now, during all of this, after having 2 kids and a new home and having a full-time job, I did still dabble in a lot of side hustles. I started an Etsy print-on-demand store. I tried Amazon KDP and made a video about that.
Amazon KDP! And I had a total of, drum roll, $3.58.
And I was still doing a ton of like eBay reselling and all the fun thrifting and all that stuff. But with 2 kids and this home and trying to manage all of that, posting videos on this channel really took a backseat. And I think I made like 1 video during that entire time.
And so that brings us back to today.
You know, when I think about the last 5 to 6 years of my life since I started this channel, my favorite seasons were the most challenging seasons of my life. Being comfortable and complacent, although it has its own perks and it feels great at the time, it tends to drive me a little bit depressed because I'm just not being challenged enough on a day-to-day basis. When I look back on this channel and I think about those very first garage sales or those first Etsy designs or those first big flips, I think about it and I have this like fondness towards them. Although they were some of the most challenging and difficult times because I didn't know what I was doing, they're still the best because I was being challenged. Now, being a new dad and being a parent has its challenge in and of itself. So it's not like I'm not being challenged, but there is a part of me that totally misses what this channel was. And so that brings us to the question of what is the $10,000 all about? So like I mentioned in season 1, I didn't really have a goal that I was going after. I was simply trying to see how far I could take $0 and turn it into whatever. And with season 2, I knew that I wanted to try to turn $100 into $100,000. But I quickly realized that the problem with that is I had all these ideas for businesses that I wanted to try out. But if I were to take away money from the money that we could accumulate to invest into starting those businesses, it felt like I was taking a step backwards from our goal. And so recently I've had this complete mind shift, and maybe for the first time ever in my life, I have had a goal that's never been so clear, and that is to make $10,000 each month from the businesses that I make. And what this will allow me to do is focus on building, scaling businesses that bring in monthly revenue rather than trying to raise some number inside of a bank account. And in the long term, that's just gonna be so much more sustainable. I've recently had this shift in my mindset where I think I hear a lot of people say that you have to quit your job to pursue your dreams. And I just think that's wrong. I don't think it's either or. I think that you can have both, but you have to be strategic. In my opinion, I think your life would just be so much better if you were self-sustainable and the jobs that you chose to work were not because you needed that paycheck, but because you just wanted to work that job. And so my question is what if your side hustles weren't supplemental income, but that income was your primary income, and any job that you chose to work, whether it's for your career or whatever, was because you wanted to do that job. So for me, that number is $10,000 a month, because after I factor out for taxes, I feel that that amount left over is good enough to sustain us for our monthly bills and to cover my family. And that number might be way higher or way lower for you depending on where you are in life. But for me, I'm just focusing on $10,000 a month. Now, I guess the question is how will we get there? The good news is I have a head start. So as I mentioned before, even though I haven't been posting on this channel, I have still very much been side hustling over all these years. Right now, I have 5 main side hustles that I do every single month. First is Amazon FBA. The second is UGC work like Amazon influencers. The third is Etsy. The fourth is I still do eBay. And then the fifth is I sometimes do like videography and freelance work with the camera that we bought through these side hustles. Now, some of these side hustles I only started recently, like Amazon FBA or the UGC content, but some of them I've been doing for a long time, and I've been doing this entire time, like eBay and Etsy. So in order to get you up to speed, let's see how we've done for the last year. So pulling up the sheet here, it looks like, so for the majority of 2025, on average, I was making like maybe a couple $100, maybe a few $100 a month from things like eBay. But in September of 2025, I experienced a pretty big change in my life, and there's gonna be a whole separate video about that one day. But for now, let's just say I had a lot more free time, which allowed me to finally take the dive and pursue some of these businesses that I've just never really had the time to pursue. So if you look at the numbers in September specifically, that was a very down month. I was negative $1,328, but that's because I took the leap and I invested into starting the Amazon FBA business, which cost me a lot of money in the LLC formation and licensing and getting the accounts all set up and the educational resources to basically start that side hustle. October is where things sort of pick up. I brought in a few $100 from eBay. Etsy brought in my usual about $150. The Amazon FBA business still was draining me because I was putting a lot of money into inventory, which it was negative $430. But I also started something new in October, which was Amazon influencers. And so for that first month, it did bring in just about $100. And I sprinkled in there some videography work, which was like a couple $100 for. So for the month of October, we were we were at a net $319. So still not close to our goal. And then things in November and December begin to shift and change. I started selling some eBay things for a friend, which really lifted the eBay business because I was flooded with inventory. So we did about a little over 1,000 in each of those months, as well as the Etsy business. And then for the first time ever in December, my Amazon FBA business went from negative to positive $80. And so you can start to see the momentum there. But what really changed in those months were in November and December, because it was Q4 and everybody shopping online, my Amazon influencers and my UGC work brought in nearly $1,000 for each of those months. So November and December, we were looking at about $2,400, and then December, $2,480. So as you can see, basically things are on a trajectory and they're going a certain direction, and spoiler alert, January and February are also headed in a very good direction. And what's really cool about that is where we ended December, I'm already 25% of the way towards my $10,000 goal. And so I believe that if I continue to double down and invest in my businesses, if I continue to work away at the Amazon FBA business and my UGC content, my Etsy and all of that, that I can grow all of these to get to the point where we're making $10,000 a month from all my side hustles. I don't know which ones will do the heavy lifting, but we're gonna find out. And I really hope that for you as a viewer, if you happen to be watching this, that it motivates you, because if I, as a dad with 2 kids and a life on and of itself, if I can do this, I believe that you truly can do this too. There are so many ways to make money out there, and I hope that this somewhat inspires you and that you stick along for the journey so that you can watch me go all the way to $10,000 a month. And I must reiterate that the goal here isn't Bugattis and Bora Bora, but really it's just about a freedom and a financial freedom that I've never really thought of up until recently. And that is, like I said, just being self-sufficient so that you can choose what you want to do. So I'm really curious to see how 2026 will shape up. I'm not sure which of my side hustles will become my big money makers, but I'm really excited to find out. Now, for this channel, I will post monthly updates on how the numbers are doing. Like I said, I need to get caught up on and give you guys my January numbers, and then I'll also give you the February numbers, which we're almost towards the end of February. And then sprinkled in between there, I'd still like to make videos that are related to side hustling and maybe some of the side hustles that I've tried, that if you heard something in this video that you're like, I'm really curious about that because it sounds cool, maybe it's Etsy, maybe it's UGC content, I can do more of a deep dive video on what I think of that side hustle and its potential, similar to what I did with the Amazon KDP video if you haven't seen that. And I'd also like to talk about just other topics surrounding money and income, sort of like my debt-free videos as well. So again, I'm sorry, I know this channel's been dead, but to me, you haven't been. To me, I've still been hustling and I'm still pursuing this solopreneurship endeavor or whatever it is. And yes, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.